Hello and welcome back to my channel. Jacob Payton here, and I'm going to be doing my end of April book haul. It is not a very big book haul. I have been trying not to acquire as many books as I used to, as I think I say this every time I do a book haul, so I'm just going to stop. I am trying to downsize, but somehow I keep acquiring even more books. But anyway, this is my end of April book haul. I did find some cool things at the end of this month, and I thought I would go ahead and show you guys. The first two I've already kind of started reading, and that is Hazard's Command by V.A. Stewart. And this is the third book in the Hazard series, which follows a naval captain in the British Navy way back when. I've been getting into a lot of these books ever since I started reading the Sharp series. I read, I can't think of his name right now, but anyway, there's a lot of series like this. They're like Horatio Hornblower-esque Navy pulp action and adventure stuff, and I've been picking them up when I see them. They're a lot of fun, and I know Sharp, the Richard Sharp series, doesn't necessarily follow the Navy. There are a couple books where he is heavily involved with the British Navy at that time, but it's all kind of in the same time period, which is like the Napoleonic and the Peninsula Wars. And I just find that time period, that like 1700, late 1700s to early 1900s, very interesting. I don't know why, but I like it. I like it in fiction books a lot, so I've been picking these up. And this is book 3. I'm not reading these books in order. I'm not even trying to. I picked this up. It kind of has a cool cover. You can see that kind of like a ship on fire, and this takes place in, I think, Crimea or off the coast of Crimea. Yeah. It's 1854, and the Crimean War is at its bloody peak, is how it reads on the back. I've heard good things about the Hazard series. I don't know how many books are in it, but like I said, I've already started it and I am enjoying it so far. So if I do really like it, I'll probably pick up more in the future. And then next up is Form Line of Battle by the author of To Glory We Steer, and that is Alexander Kent. I have not heard of Glory We Steer. I've also started this book and I am enjoying this. This follows Captain Richard Bolitho of the Royal Navy when he is given command of an antiquated gunship, the Hyperion. I'm enjoying this. Once again, I like this time period. I'm getting really into these types of books. I really like this specific era of action, adventure, historical fiction. I do not know why. Someone told me one time that when men hit a certain age, they all pick a specific war. I am almost 30. I have recently really gotten into these books in the Sharp series, and I've been reading some stuff about Napoleon, so maybe this is just my thing. I don't know how true that person was, but I know in the area that I'm from, it does kind of seem like that. You'll go to a person's house, especially like an older dude's house, and they either have a lot of books on World War II or World War I or the Civil War, and you kind of know what they're going to bring up at least once in casual conversation. Out of all of those, if I'm just some weirdo that talks about Napoleon every now and again when I'm 2 beers in, I'll take it. So those books I am kind of excited on. I think I paid less than a quarter for both of them, which is really awesome. Next up are 2 books that I honestly probably wouldn't have read if John Jakes hadn't passed this year. And that is The Bastard and North South. North South actually had a series based on it, and I've actually been to the plantation where a lot of it was filmed. Not because I was a North and South fan, but because I went there with my cousin who is a big fan of The Notebook, and they filmed like some of the scenes of The Notebook there, and it's like a big thing outside of Charleston. But anyway, this is John Jakes' North and South, which basically tells the story following 2 different sides of the Civil War. And unlike the Napoleonic era, I just don't really care about the Civil War, which is weird because I am from Virginia, and I'm from a very historical part of Virginia in which basically every town had some big Civil War battle either in it or around it. So So it is a big thing where I'm from, and maybe that's why I just don't really care about it, or maybe I just don't really find it that interesting, for a whole mess of reasons that I'm not going to get into on this channel, in the way that I would say like Napoleon and the Peninsula War or any other wars like that. It also, I don't know, it's never really been my thing, but I am going to give this a try. People do still talk about how great this book was, and you know, if I do like it, I will probably go ahead and try to find the series or watch the series. You know, this is lauded as one of John Jake's really good works, and as is The Bastard, which I think kicks off the first of his... He has a whole series that follows, like, I think they're called, like, family epics or something, where they follow, like, one family through all these generations. And it is a very big genre. It's just not one I've ever really been into. But I like John Jakes. I like what he did with Brack the Barbarian. And if he brings that style of action-adventure into both of these books, I'm sure I'm going to like them, too. Obviously, this book, it takes place way before the Civil War. This is actually, like... Surrounding, I think, the early founding of America. Yeah, English noblemen, the beginning American experience, the wondrous invention which became our America. So, very different. I do like the colonial period, so I could easily see myself getting into this book in a way that I think it might be a little harder for me to get into this book, but I will read and finish it, obviously. I do really like the colonial period. I'm getting really into colonial Gothic and like colonial fantasy, I guess, which there's a Dungeons and Dragons supplement coming out soon that I might get called Nations and Cannons for you nerds out there, which kind of is that. It's like a 5th edition rule set for if you wanted to set campaigns during like the early colonial period in America, full of like monsters and stuff like that, which I do find very interesting. Because, I mean, I think as a horror fan, there's a lot that could be done there. Next up, and a completely different note, is The Alienist by Caleb Carr. I wouldn't pick this book up because I really like the show. I think it was pretty short-lived. I think it only got like 2 seasons, maybe 3. But this is like early psychological profiling, right? They're basically people that are tracking down serial killers, or I mean, I'm sure this is one book, so it's going to be a specific killer or serial killer in this book, using a psychological profile to find them. And this is like the very early stages of that. Like I said, I really like the show, so I thought I'd go ahead and give the book a shot. This is another really big book, and compared to those other two, it will probably be a while before you see either of them pop up on this channel, just because that is a lot of reading. I mean, that's over probably 2,000 pages of books. And we are going into summer where I'm going to want to be outside a lot more now that the weather's nice. So, you know, the reviews might slow down or might not be as many stuff you see me do on book hauls and review. I do have a huge backlog of reviews I've been meaning to get to, so I doubt reviews will dwindle, so I do take that back. Next up is William Peter Blatty's Legion, and William Peter Blatty is the guy that wrote The Exorcist. You can see a really cool picture of him here on the back with a pretty stellar mustache. That is a real 80s picture there. And yeah, this is going to be another Exorcist story, which I find I like The Exorcist, obviously, but I find stories about demonic possession can be kind of hit or miss for me. But I am pretty excited about this because I did enjoy The Exorcist. I like William Peter Blatty's work. I think he's able to really kind of walk that fine line between making demonic possession scary, but at the same time not preaching throughout the entire book, which I feel like some books, they don't quite hit that mark, especially like when talking about books of like the paperback from hell genre and the way they deal with demonic possession and stuff in a lot of those books. It's a little over the top, which isn't always a bad thing, but sometimes it can feel like you're almost being preached to a bit in the book, which is not something I really like. but you also can't have stories of demonic possession without religion, obviously. So yeah, and for those of you that might be about to get offended, I don't mind religion. I just like horror that doesn't have loopholes, if that makes sense, right? Because a lot of times in a lot of demonic possession books, there's always one way out. And I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I just don't find that as interesting. But like I said, The Exorcist is told in such a way that you're able to really stay in that story, because I think in a lot of reasons because you're seeing that story from different points of view instead of the person that is possessed, whereas in a lot of other possession books I've read, you're seeing it from the possessed person's point of view, or only like a few limited characters around them. And I don't know, something about that is just not scary. Either way, I have really high hopes for Legion. I've heard good things about this. Yeah, I like The Exorcist, so I'm going into this book fully enjoying The Exorcist. And this will probably end up being a read that I will probably do closer to Halloween. I mean, it's not super long. If I take a beach trip or something, I might take it with me. But I'm not 100% sure yet. Like I said, I've got a lot of reading to catch up on. Next up is 3 books, really, by Peter Benchley, 3 complete novels. I love these old 3 complete novel sets, or 4. I had one by Ed McBain that was like 5 novels in it, and I guess who put this out? Wing Books. So yeah, I've not heard of that publisher. But this collects Jaws, Beast, and The Girl of the Sea of Cortez, which I'm pretty excited about. If you guys have been watching this channel for a while, or if you know about the stuff that I actually write as an author, I love aquatic horror. So this is right up my alley. I love Peter Benchley. I have a bunch of his paperbacks, or a couple of his paperbacks, I should say, because, I mean, he did write a lot, but I don't think a lot in the way that we think of like super prolific in terms of like authors now that turn out like 40, 50, 60 books. But that being said, his books were pretty long. I have my copy of Jaws is literally falling apart. So I essentially got this so I could reread Jaws without having my book disintegrate in my hands. It's kind of cool because it also collects Beast, which I was a fan of, which I do believe, if I am correct in this, and someone will probably correct me, or feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Beast, I believe, is about giant squids. I think that also got made into I guess it really wasn't a miniseries, but like a 2-part TV movie. I remember seeing that, and I'm pretty sure Peter Benchley did that. I could be wrong. Maybe Peter Benchley is not involved in that creation at all, but I thought it was based off of Beast by him. And if I'm wrong, I do apologize. Either way, I'm excited to read that, along with The Girl of the Sea of Cortez. I love aquatic horror. I like Peter Benchley. I mean, he's kind of the guy that, besides Moby Dick, really kicked off hardcore the aquatic horror genre in the way that I think about it, which is, scary things in the ocean eating people or chasing them down. And I would argue Moby Dick is a bit like that, but Moby Dick is also a lot more action and adventure. That's more of its focus. And the whale Moby Dick isn't necessarily the villain in the way that Jaws is in Jaws, right? Like, they could have turned that boat around whenever. And that is a video in and of itself, so I do apologize for that. And next up is someone that I've read and been meaning to review on this channel for a hot minute, and that is Joe Abercrombie. This is Best Served Cold, which I don't know if this is a standalone or if this is part of a series. It might be part of a series, but I do know that he writes standalones that tie into bigger series. I've read another Joe Abercrombie book that I keep meaning to review on this channel. I do enjoy Joe Abercrombie, but I cannot read a lot of him all at the same time, just because his stories are so dark and they are so grimdark. And let's be honest, the couple that I've read, there's not always like a happy ending at the end. And I've talked about this on the channel before. When it comes to fantasy books, or even horror books, like, I need someone to win at the end. And the thing with Joe Abercrombie is the way he writes Grimdark, I swear is darker than Warhammer sometimes. The violence is so visceral. The action scenes are amazing. But the way in which, sometimes it's politics and just life affects some of the characters at the ends of these wars, you're just like, man, so nobody came out on top. Tight. But that being said, I really do enjoy his work. I just don't read it back to back. I need a happy filler in there to kind of cheer me up before I dive back in. But that being said, if you're someone that likes, the violence level of like The Witcher or something like that, Joe Abercrombie is definitely your guy. If you like Warhammer, like the old world stuff, Joe Abercrombie is right up your alley. There's not a lot of like magic and stuff, at least not in the books that I've read. It's more just guys with swords and shields and spears. And I also like it. I've seen comparisons where people are like, if you like Game of Thrones, you'll like this. And I think I agree to a certain aspect. If you like Game of Thrones minus a lot of like the magic and the gods and stuff like that, and you're more into like the military maneuvering and the behind the door politics and just the visceral levels of violence and human degradation, Joe Abercrombie's your guy. And I'll be honest, I do enjoy this. I've talked about this on the channel. I tapped out on the Game of Thrones series, and I have not tapped out on Joe Abercrombie. And of course, that being said, for any of you Game of Thrones fans that haven't seen me talk about that in the past and you're just tuning into this video, I do like George R.R. Martin as a writer. I've read some of his other stuff. I just don't like Game of Thrones. I made it to like the 3rd or 4th book. It just wasn't for me. And it's okay. That's what books are about. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this end of April book haul. Yeah, that was all of it. It was short but sweet, just kind of showing off some cool finds. I know I haven't been making a lot of videos lately, and I am going to rectify that. Like I said, I do have a lot to review. Just work in school kind of put me behind, but I do have a content calendar and stuff, so hopefully that'll help me stay a little more on top of it going into May. But, going into May. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope, you guys had a great April, and I'm wishing you guys a great May. And like always, please like and subscribe. Feel free to comment below on any books you think I should read, or if you've read any of these books, let me know which one I should read first. And as always, I will see you guys next time.